Good afternoon, people of Pine Bluff. My name is Randall Williams. I am here on behalf of the mayor, Ms. Vivian L. Flowers, first elected mayor. She is January 1st, 2025. I'm here to talk about basically my issues with the city of Pine Bluff. For those that don't know, I'm 19 years old. I just graduated from Whitehall High School back in May. And I've been here since 2007, so pretty much I've been here my whole life. I basically, growing up, I had a very great childhood, amazing childhood at that. Growing up, I was in the mall that's no longer here. Went to the mall. Me and my mom used to take me and my brother out of school, and we would go to the mall and just have fun. We would go to the fishing side. We would, go to the arcade games, go ahead and buy stuff, buy clothes and stuff like that. But now it's kind of like a dead zone, same with downtown Pine Bluff. It used to be a city that the old folks used to tell me used to be so much booming, going on. Little Rock couldn't even compete with it. And it's like now it's like a ghost town. Nobody is going there. You have only one barbershop, Pops, that's been there for a little bit. Looking Good has transported to a new facility over by in front of Walmart. And, everything else like City Hall, the rest of the buildings are dead. And I feel the issues are the community. I feel the issues are the economic system. We have a casino here that's behind the abandoned mall that they're investing money in, but don't have investing money for anybody here in the community, like the abandoned houses that you see every corner if you ever go here. It's so much going on here that they only have certain events every year, like the King Cotton Classic, which is for basketball tournaments that, truth be told, happens with fights every time. And our kids aren't getting any better because they're just now rebuilding Pine Bluff High School. And unfortunately, I can say I didn't attend that school or graduate. I went to a totally different school called Whitehall. Due to the fact that Pine Bluff, during the time where I would have been going there, would have been a lot of fights, violence, even a death occurred there at one point. And, me being 19, I'm growing up and seeing this stuff unfold. And my dad used to take me and my brother to the parks, and we used to play basketball all the time. But now you got to have connections now to be able to play basketball and learn different things, or go to a proper community center that's open to the public, without paying money. And it's like now, you can't do that. You can't go in there and enjoy yourself. You can't go to an athletic center because we don't have one. We only have a bowling alley, which barely people go to. There's no nice restaurants to sit down and eat. There's only fast food places, which, and truth be told, is unhealthy because we have those everywhere in the world. So the issues with my Pine Bluff, is that I wish the governor and the mayor, which I wrote a letter to, can listen and read that and hear me out and hear that I'm a 19-year-old that wants to help my community. And I'm just glad to be here. But at the end of the day, if we can step up, as a youth and as a people in this community and talk to the people and just push this narrative away that Pine Bluff is no longer going to be what it was, and it can be if we all just step up and talk to the people and do what needs to be done and stop being afraid. So, as far as me, I just want to continue to help. And me going to a college at Arkansas State University, I'm not even attending UAPB because UAPB does not have the proper resources or the proper, majors or things that I want to get into to help further my career and my life, and, all we can do is pray. But for right now, God is asking us, to do something to step up, because he's going to work a miracle through us if we do our part. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our questions. For anybody, you guys have questions for me, feel free to ask them now, and, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, Mr. Williams, we have 3 questions.
Okay.
2 by the mayor's office.
Okay.
And 1 from the community.
Okay.
The first question states, what are your thoughts and what can be done about the leadership of Pine Bluff?
That's a good question. I thank you for asking that. So the leadership of Pine Bluff, like I said earlier, leadership, not much being done, but with our new mayor, Ms. Vivian L. Flowers, who was elected January 1st of this year, I'm praying that she will step up and do well. But however, for right now, our governors isn't doing much, with casinos. But what can be done is with the money that's being put in the millions that's put in the casinos can be put in our community. Now, like I said earlier, there is good news. They are rebuilding Watson Chapel High School and Pine Bluff High School. However, that's not going to be enough. There needs to be more money being put in terms of, entertainment purposes. We need more restaurants. Downtown has been broken for years. You know, it hasn't been until, you know, recently they're starting to put more restaurants a little there, but, you know, there's no movie theaters here. You know, we got to go drive 45 minutes to Little Rock to even go and see things, you know, or experience things, you know, and that's not right, which is the reason why I moved out to go 2 hours away here at Arkansas State University. But as far as the leadership, all they need to do is invest money in us, you know, invest money in us. And because at the end of the day, we're the community, we're the one that's going to be here. We're paying for the houses, we're paying for the rent in the apartments, we're doing all those things, and we're working jobs here. We need more jobs. We need more places where people can not just have places for fast food and work jobs and, you know, the railroad and things like that. We need jobs like an athletic center here. You know, we need better hotels. You know, we need better places with tourist attractions. No tourist attractions come here. You know, it used to be a city that was booming very well, but unfortunately, leadership fell off. You know, we need to stop having people in charge, even churches. So many churches, if you go here on the corner, they're everywhere, spread out. But everybody's going to the churches, but they're not receiving the help they need. So, in all, we just need better leaders. We need people to replace. That's all we need.
Okay, the second question from the mayor's office, Mr. Williams, is how does the economic structure appear in your point of view?
Economic structure. As far as the money, you know, money is basically our number one concern. You know, money is basically the number one concern that I feel is very important, because money, as we all know, it makes the world go around and it makes the city go around. So due to the fact this is why downtown is no longer what it used to be, because of money issues. You know, even though the people are second, but money is first. That's how the world works. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. But as far as economics, like I said, we got so much money being put for the higher ups, like the casinos. You know, we have so much money being put there, but our mall got closed down. So basically, people are going to Walmart or they're going to the mall in Little Rock, and that's where they're getting their supplies from. You know, our kids, you know, they need to, especially me being 19, you know, being a youth still, trying to make my hustle, trying to get out there so I can go and help this city one day. You know, I just want to make sure that our money, you know, needs to be put with, like I said, the schools, but it needs to be better, not just for grade wise. You know, people test our kids to death. But what needs to be done is to make sure our kids are very talented. You know, we need to make sure our kids are self-aware, that they're putting down weapons, you know, that they're putting down, you know, guns and drugs, you know, that they're actually trying to seek out help. You know, we need more homeless shelters. That's where our money needs to go to. We need more money in, you know, just helping out those in need, because all these abandoned houses on every corner, you know, down here you can only pay like $400, $500 for a house, and that's no kidding. You know what I mean? Because that's how bad these houses are. You know what I mean? But you go to Whitehall, which is like 5 minutes away, and they have some of the baddest houses you've seen. Some even like in California. So it's like, it's just not to play a race card or anything, but our white people, they have it right. You know what I mean? But our black people, our blacks, we're suffering not just due to even just like our governors and nothing, but sometimes it's just us being people. You know, we need to step up and do better as people, you know, and also make sure that we do the things necessary and just make sure that we step up and speak out. You know, that's how it is. Yeah. Great question.
Okay, our final question is a community question.
Okay.
And they're asking, are there ways, and what are there ways to inspire future generations?
Man, well, like I said, me being a 19-year-old kid, just graduating from high school in Maine in my first semester in college. You know, generations is tricky, but to me, living in this generation, I feel our generation just needs a little more help. And what I mean by help is we need a little bit more Jesus. And like I said, we have churches in every corner, but unfortunately, the pastors that are over these facilities or over these churches aren't really necessarily speaking the truth that our youth needs to hear. You know, you're hearing a lot about what can be done or what you are or who you should be, but we need to know what, you know, who our youth is and what they can do to improve. So in that case, you know, our youth needs, like for me instantly, you know, being younger, I used to go to the park all the time. You know, I need that more energy. Our youth needs more governance instead of, you know, being put in school all the time. And what I mean by school is great. We need our education system. However, you know, sometimes our kids, get stressed out, valuing grades over talent. You know what I mean? We test us to death, but however, we need more talent. We need to go to school. Like, I shouldn't be waking up to school dreadful, wanting to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to school to learn. We need to value learning over grades, And it's like, as far as the churches, like I mentioned earlier, the churches need to start teaching the truth to our kids.
Right.
They know we teach them about Jesus, but Jesus wants us to know much about what can happen, if we don't do right. And as far as that goes, to inspire a generation, we need to step up and stop being afraid. We need to put down the weapons, put down the things, We love social media so much, we might have to put that down some, but even if we use it, use it for a positive role. Go out there and say, hey, we're going to do a rally. We're going to go out there and help people. We're going to feed people, buy food for the poor. That's going to attract youth. And in order to do that, we need better examples for our community, for our youth, And, in order to have better examples, we need people who are actually living it instead of talking about it. For instance, like our preachers, our preachers are saying a lot of things good in terms of the Bible, but however, they're not living according to the word that God has put in our commandments and in his book, So somebody like me, I'm not bragging on myself, but I'm not afraid to go out there and live the way I'm talking. You know what I'm saying? Like people say, you got to practice what you preach. In order to do that, you have to practice what you preach. You have to live the way you talk. And, a lot of our governors, they're not really doing the same. They're saying that they're going to help our communities, but mainly they're doing the big cities like Little Rock, our state capital. They're doing so many things for them, but for our small communities, it should be their main priority. And so, as much as I love this city, however, we do need some assistance. We need a lot of assistance, and a lot of it is going to take us to step up there, and we have to make an impact. We have to speak out, because if our youth is gone and our youth isn't interested in what's going on in this city and they continue to stay and our school systems are just going to keep going into these fights, no matter how much they rebuild, if the people aren't good, then that whole building built is just useless, at that point. So, I hope you all enjoyed this speech. I hope you all got something from this. And I hope that whoever listens and take this and take it to the next level, hopefully I won't be the only one to help this out. So thank you all and have a great evening.